My dad is a collector of garbage. One man's treasure is another man's garbage.
Yeah.
And I came down from Salt Lake, and Neil had his pickup, and it was loaded up with stuff from Dad's basement. And it was his third run to the dump, and he had it all loaded up, ready to go. There were big binders of stock certificates and everything in there that were going to go to the dump. And there was an old metal box with a locking latch on it, one of those thumb latches that you push up on and the lock pops up. And it was sitting there, and I picked it up out of the bed of his truck, and I rattled it, and it was heavy, and it had stuff in it. And I says, "What are you throwing this way for? Have you looked in it? You know what's in it?" And he says, "When in doubt, throw it out." He says, I wasn't able to open it up, and it's going to the dump. And I said, "Well, Neil, if you don't mind, I'm going to keep it, and it's just going to be a symbol of Grandpa's buried treasure. And we'll never know what's in it." And I tried to open it, and I wasn't going to destroy the box to open it. So I brought it home. I was living in the Willow Creek area, the country club area of Sandy. And I had a high ceiling garage. I got a ladder out, and I put it up on a shelf, and I stuck it back on that shelf and literally forgot about it for years. And my ex-wife's father was there, and they were just about ready to go home. And I remembered that box, and I looked at my father-in-law, and I said, "Do you know anything about picking locks?" He says, "I've been known to open up a few." Well, I crawled up there and reached back, and it was unlocked. I thought, well, my son, he probably got into it wondering what's in there. And I brought it down, and I set it down, and my father-in-law and I opened it up, and it was my dad's lapidary kit. And in there was one of those small Ziploc bags, and it had a great big gold nugget in it.
Really?
And it said on it, Pine Mine 8.460Z. And it was 99.999 pure.
Really?
I had found a treasure. It was the Lost Rhoades. When Dad located the Lost Rhoades mine, and he found the pine tree that had the Oro 1856 engraved in it.
Yeah, tell me that story.
Well, I don't know much about it. I know that my grandfather went with my dad, but Granddad had he'd had heart problems, and he wasn't well enough to hike up the mountain. And my dad explored up in there, west of Moon Lake, I think a little southwest of Moon Lake, and he located that tree. Now, my grandfather, Benjamin Hart Bullock, had bought, well, he had planned to buy the map that was written by Caleb Rhoades from, I think it was Caleb's widow. And $10,000 was a lot of money back in those days.
Oh, yeah.
But that's nothing compared to what's in that mine. And so my grandfather was prepared to spend $10,000 for that, and she changed her mind because there was, a promise not to reveal the location, and it had filtered down from Thomas Rhoades to Caleb, and no, she decided she wasn't going to do it. But my grandfather he tore a piece of paper about letter size, and he wrote on that paper the exact thing that was written on that map. And that's why when you see in some of these books and it shows that Bullock map, it says this is as it was on the Rhoades map.
Uh-huh.
So he used that map, and he went up and he located the tree, and he located a mine shaft. But it was, he says it had to have been made by children or small women, because he could barely fit down through there, and I think my dad was about 5'8", and muscle, he was a bull of a man, so I can understand how he had a hard time climbing down into that hole. But the way I understand the story is Dad was afraid he'd climb down and not be able to get out, so he tied a rope around the tree and around one of his ankles. And he climbed down with his mineral pick and his carbide lantern, and he climbed down into that hole and saw where gold had been chiseled off of the wall of the shaft. And there at the end, I guess they didn't want to deal with it, but there was some white quartz and it had gold all through it. So he had taken out his pick and he picked off that quartz with the gold in it, and boy, they had a rich find. And it was the Duchesne newspaper. They had an article, I've got a copy of it. They had an article about how Bullock Mining has located the Lost Rhoades mine, and he got a team of men together and some horses and pack saddles and such, and they went up in there after the news was given out. And when they got up there, that whole area was like a bulldozer had gone in there, and there was a road fairly close, so I think they could have got a bulldozer in there. But the tree was pushed over and the mine shaft was filled up. And so my grandfather put his arm around his son's shoulder, and he says, "Let's go home, Vern. This is bigger than the two of us." And so they walked off the mountain. But I've got the mineral claims. There's 10 of them that my dad had done. And when I found that baggie of that pure gold, now my dad would take it to Lions Club, and he'd go to Rotary Club, and he'd go around to different groups of elders in the church and such, and he would show this big rock full of gold, and he'd pass it around, and it was kind of ravelly, and it got smaller and smaller, and there were guys busting off pieces and stealing the gold from the rock. So he finally just smashed up the rock, and he took all of the gold and he melted it all down into a big nugget. And so he had over 8 ounces of pure gold sitting in there. And when my wife and I got married, we had our wedding rings made out of the Rhoades gold. And
so that's what that ring's made out of?
That's the Rhoades gold. Cool. And I've still got probably 2 to 3 ounces left. We had 4 rings made. Cool. So that treasure, and it's so funny that I was going to keep that box, and I was never going to ruin it to open it up and find out what was in it. But my dad had taken the gold and he'd melted enough apart and separated it that he made little gold nuggets that he had for all of his granddaughters. And so these the girls all had these Rhoades gold. Cool. And they don't know it, but it's just wonderful. My daughter has a gold necklace that I bought from my mother, and when she passed away, I inherited it, and so I put one of the gold nuggets that was fairly large, and put that on the necklace and gave it to my daughter. So, and we still have some of that gold left.